Okay, any other announcements? I think that's good. We are at middle part of chapter 13. We're gonna get into 14, which is the big parting of the C chapter. So we should just get rolling, right? Let's say a prayer. Gracious and loving God, thank you for your word. Thank you for a time to be in your word together. Let this time be fruitful and helpful as we think about your deliverance of us in so many ways. We pray this in Jesus' name. Amen. Okay. Share this up. Off we go. So we are at the cloud and fire, chapter 13, verse 17. As you recall, Pharaoh said, get out of here. And the people have said, get out of here. We don't want any more calamity. When the Pharaoh let the people go, God did not lead them by way of the land of the Philistines. Do you need a map? Maybe just my atlas here. Oh, that's not my atlas. Here is my atlas. So, Philistines, right here. I know it's in the kind of the area of modern day Gaza and all the conflicts going on, but the Philistines were the people of the sea. So because you could think, well, here they are. Why did they just go along this way? But no, they go down this way. So they don't take the shortcut. And so there's an explanation there as to why that is, in case you were wondering.
Well, they had to go to Mount Sinai.
Right, that's right. Although that was near, so it was closer to go that way. For God said, lest the people change their minds when they see war and return to Egypt. So that way was going to be too hard. They weren't ready. But God led the people around by the way of the wilderness toward the Red Sea. And the people of Israel, now there's going to be debate about where this is. But you can tell me what your study Bibles say. And the people of Israel went up out of the land of Egypt equipped for battle. Well, even though they were equipped for battle, God didn't want them to go by way of those giant Philistines, Goliath, they're giants in the land. But they are equipped for battle, according to this text. Come on in, guys. Which is interesting. Moses took the bones of Joseph with him, for Joseph had made the sons of Israel solemnly swear, saying, God will surely visit you, and you shall carry up my bones with you from here. How long ago was that? 400 years?
They've been in Egypt.
So what that tells you is the people retained their story through their time of suffering and enslavement in Egypt. Otherwise, they would have forgotten why carry Joseph's bones? Why keep them? Why maintain that story that, hey, when we ever get out of here, we got to take Joseph with us. I think that says a lot about what was happening in those 400 years. That they kept telling the story and they told the story of Abraham, Sarah, and the rest. Okay, we'll get this paragraph on board and then we'll stop and see where you want to hone in on. And they moved on from Succoth and encamped at Etham on the edge of the wilderness. And again, we can go back to the map if we want to. So here's Succoth. So I'm assuming they encamped by the Red Sea. Now, this is, I think, what would be known as the Red Sea. And then this is a real marshy area all through here, okay? Let's see, and the Lord went before them by day in a pillar of cloud to lead them along the way, and by night a pillar of fire to give them light, that they might travel by day and by night. So God is leading them, pillar of fire in the day, at night, and cloud by day. That's a pretty big theophany. A theophany, that means appearance of God.
Oh,
Yeah, yeah, Theo, and then ophany, so, appearance, so a God appearance. It's a fancy, tricky name to say that, yes.
So they didn't sleep?
So they didn't sleep. Well, I'm assuming they slept a little bit, but yeah, they kept going at night. I think that's what that says. But I think we're gonna see here shortly that that also served to shield the people from the Egyptians when they came.
Can I ask a question?
Of course you can ask a question. I hope I can answer it.
Is there any evidence out there that there was some kind of a volcano going on that would have smoke during the day and fire at night? Is there any scientific?
Is there
evidence?
any scientific evidence for the pillar of fire?
Like a volcano?
Yeah,
Just wondering,
I'm not aware of any.
okay.
Yeah. People work hard to try and. Like we've actually talked a lot about that, the plagues, like, is there a scientific earthly explanation of how these things happen? And I think you kind of run aground there because, I mean, examples are like, okay, the frogs come, that could happen naturally, but then that they disappear right away. You know, so you kind of, it has its limits, but the people also look at the Sodom and Gomorrah story, going way back to Genesis. Was that a big volcano with sulfur raining down? And God might have used natural means to do those things for sure, but yeah. So, but I thought, Linda, you were gonna ask if there's any archaeological evidence of what's gonna go on. And that, but let's hold that question for just a minute, yeah.
Come on, you want me to remember that question?
That's why I said it, so everybody can help us. All right, no, great question. Okay, so let's finish the paragraph here. And the Lord went before the pillar of cloud, and that they might travel, so they might travel by day and night. They're in a hurry. They're trying to get out of town. They're getting out of Dodge. And so they traveled a lot by night. I don't know what time of day it was, but you know, when you travel through the desert, you do by night because it's not horribly hot.
well, it could have been hot during the daytime.
The pillar of cloud by day and the pillar of fire by night did not depart from before the people. Okay, so they're loose, they're free, they're going, yay.
And they're armed.
And they're armed, they're armed for battle.
Now, question I have,
Yeah,
here they are slaves supposedly.
right?
Under the thumb of Pharaoh, why are they armed? Where do they get the arms and the technology or the knowledge
Yeah,
to use these arms?
yep,
Now, I've heard group stories. you know,
Yes.
On History Channel for whatever that's worth, you know,
yes,
that Egypt had them as a northern border to protect them from the Philistines coming down. So they were part of the border. But Pharaoh got too worried about it being over strong. That's why he started clamping down on them.
yes,
So they were part of the Egyptian.
Yeah.
Sacrificial army up there to root their.
right. So it's very possible that. And the people that sometimes people think might be in the Egyptian is they're called Hyksos, I think is the name. And this was an ethnic group. And that were enslaved at times, but did serve in some of these ways. So it could be in their earlier history, they were a part of Egypt's defense system. And so there's a tradition there. And of course, we also hear that Egypt wants them out of there. So they took gold and silver and evidently weapons too. Yeah, yeah. Sharon.
Well, I, looked a lot of things up back a while ago, what, Bob is saying. And
Yeah.
because Moses actually was like a captain in the army of Moses, of Pharaoh's army, so he had military training,
Right, right.
leadership.
Yeah, there you go. So they have some skills. Now let's see if God uses them or not. Yes,
I think
Kim.
there's a really interesting kind of thing here, and that is when God sent them through the way of the Philistines, he did it so that they wouldn't change their mind because of that conflict and return to Egypt. And it just makes me think in a few pages, you know, after they've gone through this, they start grumbling about their meat pots and, you know, remembering the good old times. So God knows these people really
He
well.
knows them really well. And it turns out they're gonna be afraid anyway. They're still gonna wanna go back to Egypt, even though they don't run into the Philistines yet. Yeah, yeah,
I think it's their stomachs that want to go back.
yeah, their stomachs, that would be it, that's where I would fall down, you know. I would have loved to taste the manna though,
It's like chicken.
tastes like chicken. I thought you were gonna say that about the quail. Does the quail taste like chicken? I mean, that sounds good to me, you know, I love chicken, so.
I was always thinking they were like the little wafers that we used
The
to use.
communion wafers, yeah, you know, I guess it was like a dewy cottony kind of substance, maybe like cotton candy, but not quite as sweet as cotton candy, but it was sweet. I think that it does say it's sweet, that's for a while, you know, we use the Hawaiian sweet bread for communion.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Here are my bones. We got it. We're at the Red Sea. We're purged. We're ready. Other things in that paragraph. Okay, here we go. Then the Lord said to Moses, tell the people of Israel to turn back and encamp in front of Pihahiroth, between Migdol and the sea, in front of Baal Zephon. You shall encamp facing it by the sea. Okay, so tell the people of Israel to turn back. You were going a certain direction. Now I want you to come back and I want you to locate yourself here by the sea. Well, let's keep going. We'll get that paragraph. For Pharaoh will say of the people of Israel, they are wandering the land, the wilderness has shut them in. So this is not a great military strategy that God is telling them to do. Pin yourself in. Make yourself easy prey. Because look what I'm gonna do. For Pharaoh will say and I will harden Pharaoh's heart and he will pursue them and I will get glory over Pharaoh and all his hosts. And the Egyptians shall know that I am the Lord. And they did so.
That's crazy.
That's crazy.
I don't get it.
Well said. Sharon,
Well, thinking about how in the world you take a whole bunch of 100 campers and then ready to go, everybody's gonna have to go across that river. You better get them together close and tight,
okay,
because you can't have some people here, some people there. You gotta get them ready, and they gotta be very closely.
These are like 600,000 people.
That's.
remember though,
Yeah.
we want to hold that number loosely a little bit. Could
Very
be
good.
symbolic, it could be, but anyway, there's a lot of them.
There's a lot more than that.
There's a lot, and so God is setting them up.
Yeah.
But why is God doing that? We're gonna see, it says right here that I will get glory
Yeah,
over Pharaoh and all his hosts.
he knows what he's gonna do and he's just setting them up it's just like, I don't know, a chess game, you set them up
A chess game, yes. Yeah, you set a trap.
Yeah. Pharaoh's got a short memory.
And Pharaoh has a short memory. So this is the most poignant place where we get to God hardening Pharaoh's heart. Pharaoh had said, okay, I'm done. But now God reverses that. So what do we have? We have Passover. We have the blood of the lamb, the angel of death comes through, all the firstborn end up dying to get release of death and to get them out. But now the story isn't over. The Exodus is only halfway complete. We're going to have a sea crossing. We're going to have a water crossing. Did I see a hand? No.
This time, the Pharaoh is taking the lead in the offense,
Yes,
because God always set these places before, now Pharaoh is doing it.
you're right. Although I suppose God is baiting him, but, yeah. So this word glory is really important. So this is the word kabod, weight, weigh heavily upon, to be heavy, to be honored. So you really want to get this sense that, of honor, that's really important. So the reason it's sometimes translated as burdensome or heavy is because things that are heavy are what? Worth a lot. Is gold heavy? Yeah. So that's worth a lot. And so things that were, so that's why the word in an etymological sense, you know, is like the word for glory, weighty, but it's also the word for honor. Remember how important honor is, especially in, the Middle Eastern and Eastern cultures. And so we've got an honor battle with the Pharaoh and God. We're not done yet. You would think you could say, well, isn't enough enough? Now the people are free. No, they're not quite free yet. They haven't escaped Egypt yet. And there's this border, since they went south and not straight up north, that has to be dealt with. And this is gonna happen. He hardens Pharaoh's heart so that his glory may be seen. This is the same thing we've talked about a lot as we've been in Exodus. God destining, choosing, and even hardening Pharaoh's heart so that his glory will be seen. So that he can defeat not only death, but also the power of Pharaoh, and that it's a duel between gods. And God, I guess, wants to make it awful clear. And it might not be clear enough, and you're gonna see that it isn't clear enough for the people. All right, you have thoughts on that? Comments?
Alter has an interesting, he says, that word for glory has been repeatedly used. It's a play on words that's been repeatedly used for the severity of the plagues. So the heaviness of the plagues,
The heaviness of
the hardness of Pharaoh's heart, and the density of the Israelites' livestock. So it's, there's have been a lot of plays on words.
Right.
I think that kind of a really interesting,
It is.
contrast.
Yes, nice.
One comment here.
Please.
Okay. God is continually battling with people's free will. People have free will, they can do what they want. So God has constantly battling the free will. If he lets up, say, okay, we've had enough, let's go back. Because they have the choice to do that. So God has to keep on reminding them, hey, listen, I'm in charge, even though you got free will, listen to me. And you know, how come you have to tell a 5-year-old we have to do something, you know? Yeah,
Yeah,
you guys, something's gotta teach the Israelites like young 5-year-olds.
yeah. I'm glad you brought that up, Bob, because I think it's a question. Do the people? I do not argue that they're gonna make decisions, you know. But are they in a place where they can make the right decision? It's interesting. Did Pharaoh have free will?
They've been in bondage for so long, they didn't have any
Well,
chance to make decisions
Yeah.
and they didn't have the ability to do that.
so we could say God, of course, didn't create us as robots.
Yeah.
But then in that, however, are the people with what we see that they do, does it turns out, do we get some evidence that they had the ability to choose the good and not do the, you know, let's
Look at the
keep,
golden calf, you know, here they are, you know,
well, there you go.
how far they quickly they move away.
We're all right. So the question is could they have actually made the right decision? Let's just leave that as an open
They didn't
question.
know where they were going.
What's that?
First, they didn't know where they were going.
I know. And you know, they had only seen like 10 plagues, miracles.
Yeah.
They hadn't, I mean, they didn't have much to go on. That,
But here they are, out in the middle of the desert,
yeah.
where are we going?
Well, let me show you. Let's do it. When the king of Egypt was told that the people had fled, the mind of Pharaoh and his servants was changed towards the people. Now, this is again where you look at a lot of biblical scholars want to say you got some different traditions being woven here. This is saying what the verses just said in a little different way. Do you see the difference? The mind of the Pharaoh and his servants was changed. It doesn't say God hardened. It says his mind was changed. I'm not saying it's a conflict. I'm just saying this is why a lot of scholars believe that you've got a few different traditions that have been now woven together like a
So
tapestry.
the king of Egypt and Pharaoh are the same people.
Correct.
Same person.
Correct.
But you know, we in our day, you know, we make decisions and then we see something happen and we change our mind and,
All the time.
yeah, and I think with Pharaoh, you know, he was fed up with what was happening, but then when he saw him leave, all of a sudden there was all this servant.
He had second thoughts.
Yeah.
For sure.
So,
Well, probably a step, start pointing the finger, you let him go, hush, you know,
Yeah, I mean, this is a horribly shameful thing on his rule as a pharaoh.
yeah.
and his support staff there, whatever you wanna call them, say, hey, you know, what are you doing then, you know?
Well, they definitely would be a part of, in his ear about it, and so you could see him kind of changing his mind or getting. You know, so upset about the firstborn and everything that's happened, I'm just gonna wipe these people out. You could see him going there, that's not surprising, Sharon and then Ross, yeah.
Well, God is always 8,000 miles ahead of us. And it strikes me like, Bob's talking about, you know, those sorts of things, and I think it all comes together because when Egypt is defeated,
Yeah,
they're gonna be so defeated, but they're considered a major power in that whole entire region, and it sends a message to the enemies. Look what happened with these people, they have a God that they're just getting to know. And there's, so.
the word will obviously go out.
Exactly, so there's a future thing going on with the plan for their benefit
And
that we can't always understand when we get into situations. What's gonna happen, and, you know, can really relate.
yes, we can, absolutely. Did I see a hand over here? Ross,
13:17 says, when the king of Egypt let the people go. So he already knew they were.
He's done good at it.
yeah, he let him go, so he already knew what?
That they were going.
That they were gone.
That they were gone, right. He knew they were gone, but now he starts to have second thoughts. How's this gonna look, et cetera? And again, the narrator here of Exodus says God purposefully hardened his heart because he wanted more glory to be shown. There's another part of the story. There's the Passover lamb, and then there's also gonna be this water crossing. Yeah, Bill?
Another object, not God, after the Pharaoh go after them, is he knew what was going to happen to the Egyptians. Where they tried to cross.
Well, sure.
And that would have been the event that would have probably have Pharaoh and all of the people, after the other pharaohs after him saying, we're not going to mess with these people at all.
That's true. After this happens, you would think that Egypt would say, we don't care that those people are wandering around in the desert out there in the Sinai Peninsula. Yeah, we don't care. We'll keep them on that side. We're fine. Yeah, that is from a military standpoint or from a human standpoint, that'd be absolutely true, for sure. Yeah,
So I had a
please, Paul.
observation, but this is not a biblical observation. I was just thinking Pharaoh here, you know, when all the people of Israel in the land of Goshen, it's pretty easy to contain them. But once they're out in the desert, and if we're really talking about a huge number of people, and he's only bringing 600 chariots, plus a few men, an army,
Yeah,
how would you put the cat back in the bag?
yeah.
That is, he had to be kind of, his mind was not clearly thinking in this, not only was his heart hardened, but his mind was not thinking clearly.
Yeah, not a smart move anyway. Yeah. Desperation,
Desperation, yeah.
yeah.
Well, I'm just thinking his heart like got hardened because all of a sudden he realized his economy has been ruined.
Yeah.
There's nobody left to do the work. And
Who's gonna follow him now that he's been thoroughly routed by this god of the slaves? Gloria, were you jumping
Well,
in?
I was just gonna say, this whole thing, I just love that God's in control.
Yeah,
And we can apply that to our lives today. I mean,
Yeah.
we get all upset over things, but we can rest in that.
that's great news.
You gotta
Yes.
keep in mind too, after this Exodus event, Egypt continues on for several hundred, close to
Oh.
1,000 years as a major power. in the
That's
area.
correct. And Egypt is really, at this stage, in this late Bronze Age, I think the world power.
Yeah.
I think Assyria, they're starting to rise at this time, but Egypt is the,
So this-
superpower of the world.
This event here is just a footnote in history as far as Egypt is concerned.
It's correct.
Look at the Egyptian history there.
There is one little reference that scholars debate that might be a reference to the Hebrews and the Egyptian, histories and hieroglyphs and all that. I made mention already in this class that I'm not surprised at all that even if it's not there at all, because kings didn't regularly, write about their great catastrophes and defeats. That's not the way history was written back then. The one that wins gets to write the history, and you wouldn't hear about this event. You wouldn't expect to hear about it. It's in any of their official stuff. They just wouldn't write that. They just wouldn't, hey, let's talk about our legacy and let's make sure we put in there how the Hebrew slaves destroyed us, and no, that just wouldn't be in there anyway. Okay, I saw something over here. Yeah, no, okay, all right. So. And they said, what is this we have done that we have let Israel go from serving us? They do forget quickly about all those plagues. So he made ready his chariot and took his army with him, and took 600 chosen chariots and all other chariots of Egypt with officers over all of them. So I don't know how many other chariots, but 600 of the chosen ones. This is the elite. This is the elite soldiers. And the Lord hardened the heart of Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and he pursued the people of Israel while the people of Israel were going out defiantly. The Egyptians pursued them, all Pharaoh's horses and chariots and his horsemen and his army, and overtook them and camped by the sea. at Pihareroth in the front of Baal Zephon. Exodus from Egypt, Baal Zephon, where would that be?
You know, something I love about this class is you struggle with pronunciation.
Oh, yeah.
You actually was spelling.
I don't want to show off. I would say if I saw it in Hebrew, I could say it better. I could still pronounce Hebrew, but even if I don't know it. Okay, so here are some possibilities as far as these places go. But I'm not sure that we have confidence in that, so.
Yeah.
So, I suppose this is the time as well, when we should talk about the Red Sea. What do your Bibles say about the Red Sea? In your, study Bibles, let's see. And they did so,
The Sea of Reeds here.
Sea of Reeds.
There's two seas, Red Sea and the Sea of Reeds.
Yes.
Two different ones.
And in the Hebrew, in some places, that same term refers to the actual Red Sea, the big body of water. And in other places, it refers to this Reed Sea. Now, historically, a lot of people want to say, well, of course, it was the Reed Sea. There's no way God would part this big sea with, that's 100 feet, 200 feet deep or something, and the people would go across. But then you have to ask yourself, well, how did all the Egyptians drown in the Reed Sea? When it came back in? Again, we can try and say, was this a tsunami? Was this an earthquake?
It was God.
It was God. That's certainly where you have to end up.
Yeah.
So there is some question about the location of the crossing. Maybe these bodies of water here are big enough that people could, an army could be drowned in them.
Pastor Bill?
Yes.
You see up there where it said that it's not there, around the seas thing. This study Bible says that, the reference to the Red Sea can hardly be to the northern end of the Gulf of Suez, since reeds do not grow in salt water. Moreover, an Egyptian papyrus document seems to locate Baal Zephon in the vicinity of Talkenhead, a site near Lake Menzelet, about 20 miles east of Ramses, that lake there.
So right here.
The crossing of the Red Sea thus probably occurred at the southern end of Lake Menzelet.
Which I'm assuming is this lake
I'm
here.
assuming is that, yeah.
Mhm. Yeah,
So who knows?
so who knows? So, yes, please, Mary. Yeah, what does yours say?
Mine says it was likely the northern extension of the Gulf of Suez.
Okay, so now that one,
So is that the
That's
same?
here.
No.
No, it's down here.
that would be here.
And then it says, it's got, it looks like it's south of the modern port of Suez.
I'm assuming, isn't this the Suez, what's known today as the Suez Canal,
Yeah,
right here?
no, that's the Red Sea, the Suez Canal.
Oh, this is the Red Sea, so over
That's
here,
the Reed Sea there.
No, that's the Gulf of
That's the reason.
Aqaba.
this is the Gulf of,
Aqaba,
and what is this today?
Gulf of Suez. So I think Suez Canal went through that one.
Yeah, went up to.
So the modern Suez Canal is here.
Yeah, that's where all the ships are being attacked, they're going up to the Suez Canal on the Red Sea there.
Right. So I think Mary's Bible suggests that it's at the tip
Uh-huh.
here.
Yeah,
Okay.
interesting.
So again, we don't know exactly. And yes, there are archaeologists who are trying to find buried chariot wheels, all kinds of things. And some people claim that there is, some support for that, although I suppose if it got buried in mud, it might last for you know, what, 3,000 years? But you, again, probably wouldn't expect to find evidence this way, but I don't know. Bill, yeah,
Yeah, and the Infant Study Bible, has a note, it says, because the area south and east of Egypt was a wilderness, Pharaoh would conclude that Israel missed the main road home and lost their way.
yeah. Yes, because they went down instead of straight away, that, hey, they're lost, they're floundering, I got them.
Nobody stopped to ask directions.
Nobody stopped to ask directions, a man was in charge. And men were in charge.
Okay, GPS.
You know, that, the whole, you know, direction thing on phones has really healed a lot of marriages, because as long as you enter it right, then there's no debate.
I'm gonna argue this with the GPS.
Yes, I know, it can't be that way. Oh, man, when those first came out, that saved my bacon. Especially up here, because you don't know where you're going. I mean, you got all these neighborhoods. In Phoenix, you know, you had straight road. You had a grid. First Street, Second Street, Third Street, whatever. Here, it's like, Sandy knew I was gonna be totally hopelessly out of luck. So she got me one of those old fat Garmin things.
Oh, yeah.
I put it on there and
Yeah, but you
the
got.
Lord provided it just the right time. Anyway, so, you know, it's good for us to just make note that there's some debate about where this crossing was. There is no debate, at least from the text of the Bible, that this is a huge body of water. Okay, yeah, more on that. Thank you for those. Really good. Okay, let's keep getting into this here. When Pharaoh drew near, the people of Israel lifted up their eyes, and behold, the Egyptians were marching after them, and they feared greatly. Now, they were a military group, though, but they feared greatly. I imagine they didn't have chariots. And the people of Israel cried out to the Lord. They said to Moses, "It is because there are no graves in Egypt, is it? Because there are no graves in Egypt that you have taken us away to die in the wilderness? What have you done to us in bringing us out of Egypt, Moses?" I don't know how Moses survived it all. "Is not this what we said to you in Egypt? Leave us alone that we may serve the Egyptians? For it would have been better for us to serve the Egyptians than to die in the wilderness."
Moses answered.
Did they say that to Moses? I don't know.
Probably more than once.
Are you surprised? I'm not surprised that they say this. One, because had I been there, I might have been thinking the same thing. I don't know I'd have had the guts to say it, but I would have been thinking, this is great. We did this whole thing and you camp us by the sea. We're sitting ducks. We're gonna be slaughtered. I mean, wouldn't it have been better for us to be buried in Egypt? But Moses doesn't say, "You ungrateful." He says to the people, "Fear not." Fear not. Stand firm and see the salvation of the Lord, which he will work for you today.
Doesn't that sound like St. Paul?
It does. Yes, it does. So constantly, when God intervenes, the first word is fear not. What does Jesus say to the disciples when they're locked away in the room? He says, "Peace be with you, do not be afraid."
The angel said that when.
The angels,
Jesus was born.
right, the angels are saying that at the tomb, fear not. One of God's, yes, and this is the This is, you know, even while fear is the beginning of wisdom. You know, and this, in the sense of having awe and respect and reverence and all of that for God. But this is the kind of, I gotta get out of here and run away fear. I'm gonna, you know, the panic fear. Stand firm and see the salvation of the Lord. Now notice what Moses didn't say. Get your swords out, set up this thing, let's get this fortifications going, let's get ready, get the people in the front line. He says, fear not, watch what God's gonna do. For the Egyptians whom you see today, you shall never see again. The Lord will fight for you, and you have only to be silent.
You know, isn't it neat that Moses said that?
Yes.
Because, you know, God was absolutely speaking through him right now.
I was so struck when I just read through this before class. The be silent.
Yeah.
Just
Be silent and stand firm. Yeah.
Or shut up, I'm sick of hearing you.
shut up, I'm sick of hearing you. Yeah, I suppose so. It's like a parent, like, you know, it's quiet down in here. Pay attention. I love to be silent. What is this little note here? Isaiah 30. For thus says the Lord God, the Holy One of Israel, in returning and rest you shall be saved. In quietness and in trust shall be your strength. But you were unwilling to do that. Now notice, again, I can't help but to, as a Christian, you know, jump in here with the salvation story. And that Luther had, in addition to law gospel, he also said there's two kinds of righteousness. And you need to distinguish these two. And the righteousness we have in Christ that makes us just and innocent and reconciled and redeemed, and yes, someday saved. The righteousness we have in Christ, Luther he emphasized the big difference between that and this other kind of righteousness, what I'll tell you about in a minute, is that it's passive. Now, we think passive's bad. You should never be passive as a Christian. We want active Christians. Well, of course we do, on the second kind of righteousness. But the first kind, shut up and be quiet. Here, that's reconciliation. Trust, like it says here in Isaiah 30. I love that, that connection. In returning and rest, you shall be saved. In quietness and trust. Passive. Stop talking. God's doing something for you.
So I can take my afternoon nap.
You can. You can.
I think of the words, be still and know that I am.
Be still, beautiful. Be still and know that I am God.
I love it.
Yes, I do too. There is something to stopping our working and doing what Mary did. Sitting at the feet of Jesus. Receive it. Now Luther said there is, of course, a second kind of righteousness. That's the stuff we do. Loving neighbor, you know, serving, you know, all of that. That flows out of the first kind of righteousness. But again, you mix those up and you mess up the whole thing. Okay?
Well, I think I would be, watching this whole group of people panicking
Yes.
and, thinking about how you're trained to be a classroom teacher.
Mm.
So you have a whole room full of kids and they're all going crazy. They're all out of control. How are you gonna get their attention? Yell loud? No, you tell them quietly and that gets their attention. Whereas Moses has got to get the people's attention and get them with him.
Yes.
And so he's
Yeah.
coming across as being quiet, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
And that would get their attention.
The Lord will fight for you. You have only to be silent. Notice again that there isn't a get ready, get your fortifications, get your swords out. Let's get the archers in their place. No, you just sit there and do nothing. For by grace you have been saved, not through works of the law, lest anyone boast. Okay, sorry, I just can't help but make that connection.
I think it's so funny how he's telling them to be quiet and be still and be silent, but then look at verse 15.
Yeah, let's go. The Lord said to Moses, why do you cry to me? Tell the people of Israel to go forward. Lift up your staff and stretch out your hand over the sea and divide it. So the Lord, though, says, don't look at the Egyptians. Line up at the sea. So Moses says, quiet down. Don't do anything. Don't worry about the Egyptians. And then God says to tell Moses, turn him around towards the sea. Tell the people of Israel to go forward. Lift up your staff and stretch out your hand over the sea and divide it, that the people of Israel may go through the sea on dry ground.
You just wonder what's going through Moses' mind at that time.
Yeah, it's crazy amazing.
Yeah.
It is crazy amazing. I'm tempted to try something here. Just came to me, so I'll just do it. I've just said, Moses says, be silent, be passive, shut up, whatever you want to do, just stop, watch what the Lord's going to do for you. And then God tells Moses to turn him around towards the sea and part the sea. Now, what I'm always doing as your pastor, and as a Lutheran, who our favorite sacrament is kind of baptism. What I'm always doing to you when you're scared and you're upset, or death is staring you in the face, or your own sin is bitten you real good, or somebody else's sin is bitten you really good. What am I always doing? Turn and face the water. Face baptism. Because in your baptism is our water crossing. And there's New Testament to support that. You know, there's always a water crossing. And I think that's another really powerful way to look at baptism. It's a water crossing. Because what does it do? Paul says it connects us to Jesus, his death and his resurrection. Okay, so now this is where I wanted to get. I didn't think I'd do this so fast, but I'm gonna do it right here because I will forget otherwise. Passover. Jesus is now our Passover lamb who takes away the sin of the world. There's that part of the event. And then he dies, and what happens on the third day? He rises. The sea is parted. And so you see in the Exodus story, a dying and a rising, a deliverance and a new creation.
You see that in the tearing of the veil in the.
Sure,
Yeah.
absolutely. Paul says we are a new creation. And so there's another big moment in the people of Israel's life that mirrors the same, a little bit of the same situation. What happens? They get back into the land and they go after other gods, and the northern kingdom is destroyed, and the southern kingdom finally is destroyed by the Babylonians, and the people are taken off in slavery to Babylon. And when the prophet in the middle part of Isaiah starts to preach, he goes back to the Exodus. And he says, we are gonna be delivered. We're gonna get to go. We're gonna go home. And he uses imagery of water crossing, of Exodus being delivered and then a new creation. We're gonna be back in our land and there's gonna be a new creation. And that then sets the stage for Jesus's life and a different kind of Exodus and new creation. And one of the New Testament evangelists picks this up. You remember which one? The Gospel of Luke, when Jesus is transfigured, what are Moses and Elijah and Jesus talking about? The absolute exact word in Greek is his exodus. The dying and rising, the deliverance, the breaking of bondage, and then the water crossing into new creation.
You know, this is a lesson too, of, when we get all uptight about things and everything, it's good to look back at what God has done in your life,
Yeah,
you know? So just like here, you know, he's always telling us to remember. And that's what we should do today, remember what God's done.
that word is so often used, and especially in the Hebrew scriptures. Remember the water crossing, remember this, remember that. And so that's why we're always saying, remember you were baptized. So when Luther was in his most horrible places, everything looked like it was lost. You know, he's hiding out in the Wartburg Castle. There's all kinds of craziness going on in Wittenberg, and it just looks like all is lost, and he's feeling assaulted by the devil. He said, I've been baptized. He remembered what God had done for him. He remembered his water crossing. Bill.
In the sequence of events, and parting of the water, and the Israelites go through, and then the Egyptians come. This is an event that happens to them that I think in the future history with pharaohs and so forth, they're not gonna go mess around after. And, you know, take the land route, which is just.
Right.
rough. Round.
Well, it certainly would give them pause for a long time.
Yeah, you know.
But unfortunately, after they get in the land, Egypt is still, but Egypt, by the time the people of Israel get established in the land, Egypt is kind of waning in their power, but they're still a force. But yeah, it gives them notice for sure. Okay, then the angel of God, who was going before the host of Israel, moved and went behind them. And the pillar of cloud moved from before them and stood behind them, coming between the host of Egypt and the host of Israel. So God is gonna shut the door while the people go across. And and it lit up the night without one coming near the other all night. So they are like close by. Then Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and the Lord drove back the sea by a strong east wind all night and made the sea dry land, and the waters were divided. And the people of Israel went into the midst of the sea on dry ground, the waters being a wall to them on their right hand and on their left.
That must have been a weird feeling.
Yeah, Pete.
I observed something many years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So in Chesapeake Bay,
Yeah.
we had a strong sustained wind for a couple of days. And it got up to almost 70 knots at one.
Mhm.
And the water on the bay all transferred to the eastern shore. It got blown away. So much so, it wasn't the people of Israel
Yes.
on the ground, but someone drove their Volkswagen Beetle
Yeah.
way out where we used to, you know, be out boats all the time.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
it was a natural phenomenon.
Right. So you could see that the wind could be powerful enough to do something like this, you know, yeah. That's what a sight that must have been. Did it cause flooding on the other side of the, I imagine.
Very rural.
Yeah, very rural, yeah. But yeah, on the right hand and on their left, the waters were there. I mean, Cecil B. DeMille
Yeah.
probably had this pretty good.
Yeah.
The Egyptians pursued and went in after them into the midst of the sea, all Pharaoh's horses, his chariots, and his horsemen. And the morning watch, the Lord in the pillar of fire and the cloud looked down on the Egyptian forces and threw the Egyptian forces into a panic, clogging their chariot wheels so that they drove heavily. So they went across in dry land, but evidently chariots were having some trouble. And the Egyptians said, let us flee from before Israel, for the Lord fights for them against the Egyptians. So we get part of the story that the Egyptians feel like this is a futile exercise. Then the Lord said to Moses, stretch out your hand over the sea, that the water may come back upon the Egyptians, upon their chariots, and upon their horsemen. So Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and the sea returned to its normal course when the morning appeared. And as the Egyptians fled into it, the Lord threw the Egyptians into the midst of the sea. The waters returned and covered the chariots and the horsemen of all the hosts of Pharaoh that had followed them into the sea. Not one of them remained. But the people of Israel walked on dry ground through the sea, the waters being a wall to them on their right hand and on their left. Thus the Lord saved Israel that day from the hand of the Egyptians, and Israel saw the Egyptians dead on the seashore. Israel saw the great power that the Lord used against the Egyptians, so that the people feared the Lord. Now they have that right fear. And they believed in the Lord and in his servant Moses. So this event happened so that the people would fear, have that awe, respect, reverence, and believe. What do we got here for a Psalm 106:12? Then they believed his words and they sang his praise. That's a psalm about the Exodus. And so this is a cool little reference that's helpful. That in Jesus's ministry, especially in John here, that oftentimes they would see those signs that Jesus did, and then they believed in him. So God's event, his proclamation, and they went across and they believed, and they walked on dry ground by foot. Doesn't it say? Did I pass that? See. But the people walked on dry ground through the sea, the waters being a wall to them. Okay. Yeah. Next week, we can get into the Song of Moses, which a lot of people feel is one of the oldest traditions in the Old Testament. Because it's like one of those ancient songs that go way back to the actual event. But nonetheless, what do you think?
I think that, it doesn't say anything about Pharaoh now believing.
Correct.
God.
Pharaoh is toast.
Yep.
Pharaoh, I assume Pharaoh's drowned.
Yeah.
Pharaoh didn't go in there, otherwise.
He did?
No.
No, the army went there.
Yeah.
Oh, the Pharaoh stood back?
Didn't say that, but you know,
It said not one remained.
I missed that.
well, the thing is, the Pharaoh died in there, and they're up a record of him dying.
I don't know that they would do that.
People would not go.
No,
Does it say the king didn't go in? I want to be completely accurate here. Ellen, what verse is that?
28.
28 says,
what did it say?
so Moses stretches, da, 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 da.
Not one of them survived, said, but I still think, I don't think the Pharaoh.
And all the hosts of Pharaoh that had followed them into the sea, not one of them remained. Okay, so we don't know if the Pharaoh survived or not, but we don't hear that, and then the Pharaoh finally believed, because that's not the point, is it?
I thought that was the point.
No, the point was showing God's glory
Well,
and
still.
defeating the God of Egypt. The God of Egypt. Inquiring minds want to know, you guys want the Pharaoh to come around.
Doesn't mean that some of the people of
Yeah.
Egypt.
How did the other Egyptians back in Egypt react to all of
I
that?
don't think he did.
We're not told.
Oh, okay.
We're not
I
told.
think so.
One can make some assumptions that it's like, well, this guy gets fired. You know,
He's too.
If everyone's destroyed, there's no bring the news back.
Stop
to the rest of the people.
if there's no one, if everyone's destroyed, there's no one to bring the story back, yeah.
They would know that the other people who were sent out didn't return.
They would know the people didn't return,
But this is Ramsey, right? He's a Pharaoh at the time.
This
There
is,
is a historical timeline for the Ramsey king. And all that. Right, pretty much know where the sequence goes, historically.
that is an issue of debate, which that's the traditional Pharaoh that people talk about. And I'm not, my brain doesn't work very good with all those details that way, but I know that there's debate about which Pharaoh. So we have a lot of questions, don't we, that the text isn't answering. What does that tell you? That, sorry, I don't mean to be belittling your questions. That's not the point.
What it tells me is be still and know that I am God.
Be still and know that I am God. I like that. That I am God and I will do what I will do. And you can trust me and I deliver on my promises. And I can even part waters and save people. This is the defining moment. This is what makes the people of Israel the people of Israel. They stop being Hebrews and they start becoming Israelites. This moment is for our Jewish friends still their death and resurrection. This is, if this didn't happen, all bets are off. So it is no surprise to me that the New Testament talks about Jesus' death and resurrection as an Exodus. It is that kind of pivotal moment. But God delivers. And God is not thwarted by the Pharaoh. And the Pharaoh actually becomes a pawn of God showing who is God and who is not. Those are some of the things I would say. I have those questions too. I'm not saying I don't. But when the Bible, like for instance, in the Genesis story, the creation story, we're over time. Scientific minds, and you can do this, you can put science with the story of Genesis 1. I commend that. But Genesis 1 was written to a people who didn't even know the world wasn't flat. So no, God isn't gonna tell them the way he would tell us if he was gonna tell us today. God had a reason to give the people that story, and it wasn't to give them a scientific explanation about all this. It was to tell them, I created you and you are not an accident. And so this story wants us to know that God is the Lord Almighty, King of Kings, Lord of Lords. There's no other God like God. There is no other God. There may be forces and spiritual forces and all this, but the God of the Pharaoh, Ra, or whatever God that Pharaoh was worshiping at the time, is not God. And God cares about those who are suffering, and he defeats not just the Pharaoh, but the forces that caused Pharaoh to do what Pharaoh did, and that is sin. Okay, I'm kind of preaching now. Any parting shots, comments?
Just one quick thing on Genesis. that,
Yeah,
Several books, or at least one of the books from Reasons to Believe.
Yeah.
Covers that.
Yeah. and it overlays science with Genesis 1, and it's a helpful thing. Paul?
I was just gonna say that there's a lot of questions we have, and they're not given to the text. So I'm thinking it's not that, those questions weren't, the answers to those questions weren't something that are the important thing.
Right, that's it. I think we have to kind of say, okay, I get it, but it doesn't mean you don't have to be a little frustrated, and you would like to know. Yes, please.
And God does things on his timeline.
Sure.
Doesn't mean we're gonna not feel a lot of pain in this
Yeah.
world,
Yeah.
but we have to keep believing.
All right, let's go in peace and serve the Lord.
And
Next week, we're right at chapter 15 with the Song of Moses. And you can plan on continuing on in May. Jonathan and Kim are gonna be the leaders.
I was thinking that the Egyptians must have had some better before the armies, and that would be.
Right, but they all died. Unless the Hebrews. Maybe that's why it's not in the Egyptian Just, no one can come there and tell me. All right.
Yeah.